Hello everyone, Hafsa here. As you can see, this is the main screen of Flipaclip. This is where you're going to see all of your current projects. As you can see, I have quite a lot. And here is the movies section. This is where your exported files will be. As you can see, you have either a GIF or an MP4 format, which is saved here. This part is just when you want to export something that you've already exported. It's useful, but it actually takes a lot of memory, so I kind of advise you guys to just delete your exported movies after you finish them. Do keep your projects though, because they are the things that you actually want to work on, and you can always export them again. Okay, so right now we're going to start with making a new animation. So as you can see, you just press on the plus button at the bottom. You have to name your animation. In this case, let's do it Cursor 1. Okay, you have to name it. Here in the background option in the middle, you can see there are saved backgrounds that come with the software itself. You have some textures, some patterns, and some scenes. I usually don't use them, they're very generic. Here you can choose a basic color for your background. Obviously I always choose white, sometimes gray if I know that the scene is going to be dark from the beginning. Here you can import your own photos. You can either go to the photo library or you can import it from your files. As you can see, you can only choose files which are not movies or GIFs. After we have our background options, it's okay to choose them from the beginning, but don't worry because we can always change them again after the project is already started. The thing that cannot be changed is the canvas size. Here you have your standard templates. I always use the 1080p, which is the standard size for high quality animation, but you can also have different sizes canvas. These are mostly just for proportions actually, because once you go inside a size or a certain proportion, you can choose your own size. There is a limit, but it will automatically tell you when that limit is reached, and it will automatically keep your proportions. As you can see, this is the upper limit. It will not let you choose something that is above that. But for now, I will just go with a standard option. Last thing to choose is the frame rate. Now, as we talked about, in animation their standard frame rate is 24 frames per second. Of course, you can choose anything in between, but it might not be good when you work with a team because it will not be exportable in a way that is helpful for your other teammates. You can also choose 12, which is animation on 2s, and 8, which is animations on 3s, 6 animations on 4s, and so on. This can also be changed later on, so there's no problem. Okay, so now we have the name, which is mandatory, the background, which you can choose at the beginning but change later, the size, which is again something that is mandatory, you cannot change it, and the frame rate, which can be changed later. Okay, so this is your main project view. By zooming in and out with 2 fingers, you can change both the size and the rotation of the screen, so it's easier for you to adjust your view and your drawing. Okay, so first we're going to go over the tools. As you can see, they're on the left side of the screen. We have the brush tool. When you tap on it, you can see the options. So if you tap again on the brush, you can see you have a pen, which allows you to draw stuff with line thickness variation. You have your pencil, which is just a little bit more textured, and it can also show a little bit of opacity variation. We have the brush, which again gives you certain opacity variations, but not so much for the thickness. And lastly, we have the highlighter, which just gives you a line with constant direction, I guess. Let's move it to black so we can see better. It's like thick and thin with a constant direction. Okay, the second thing you need to know about the tool is the size. So, to choose the size, you just tap on this button, the one that is highlighted right now, and by moving the tool up, you can enlarge it, and by moving it down, you can make it smaller. In this software, the pen tool in 1 and 2 pixels actually give you a constant thickness line as well. My standard line thickness is actually pen 2 pixels because it gives you a line which is both pretty smooth and does not give you too many variations to worry about. Okay, last step is the color and opacity. Again, same thing as with the size of the brush, you can control the opacity by moving it down and up. So let's say I do stuff like this. Right now it's with lower opacity. But as you can see, you can just go over it and it will get darker. This is the same for all brushes. Second tool is the eraser. This one does not have actual variation with the brush itself, but you can again control the size and how soft or hard it is. So let's say I have some kind of shape here, which I want. I have some kind of shape here, so with the eraser I can just choose the size and the opacity and softness of the eraser. So on 0% you will have crisp lines, while on 100% you will have very soft effect. This can be very helpful when you want to do some corrections or some gradient effects with your animation. Again, you can also change the opacity of the eraser itself. This is actually somewhat hard to control when it comes to making it as a special effect, but there's no need to worry because it is quite intuitive once you start. Next tool we have is the lasso. Once you select it, you can basically select any shape that you want. You can move it, you can enlarge it, you can deform it, you can rotate it, and if you move that little dot in the center, this is actually your anchor. So let's say I put it here. Now once you deform, enlarge, or rotate it, it will rotate it around that dot. So if you want, for example, make a clear arc with your object, you can just put your dot in one place. You can copy it, and then on the next frames, your dot will stay in that same place. So when you continue onwards, you don't have to worry about making it in the correct distance from that certain point in the arc. Next tool is one that you've seen me use throughout this video, is the bucket tool. Basically, once you have your shape, you can just go, choose a color for your liking, and color it. Now the thing about the bucket tool is that it can only color when the lines are completely closed. So let's say I have something like this, once I try to color it, it will color anything. And even if you have tiniest distance, it might not color it. So you have to be very careful with your lines. But the way to bypass that is actually with this percentage right here is the threshold of how much coloring you can get inside your line. So let's say right now, as we've seen, this option will not let me color inside it. But if I lower it, I can still color inside it. The downside is that you will have those lines right here. But again, if you do your animation for yourself, it might not be a problem. The easiest way to bypass that is just to have good lines from the get-go and use a higher threshold. And now the last option is the text. Here you can have your own text that come with the software. And you just write whatever you want. And you can change the size. As you can see, it changes automatically on the left hand as well. And you can change the color. This concludes the tools. Now we're going to the top right corner. First Once you select a tool, there is the ruler option. You have your line, the square in the middle will change its positions on the screen, and those dots will change the rotation of it. You can go directly over the line, or it will create lines which go in the same direction all throughout the screen. For circles, again, you can choose to make a circle directly on the line or inside the other lines. And once you move it, you can make any other shape. Now remember that when you have your circle, it will only go around the middle point. So if you want to have, for example, something really big right here, you will have to move your point. To make it perfect circle again, you just have to tap the line and it will move it to the same position in the middle of the screen. Same for square. Although square has some problems with keeping your edges sharp. The ruler tool only works for the pen and eraser. Once we go to the select tool or the coloring or the text, you can see that it is turned off. Next thing we're going to learn is the copy and paste tools. As you can see, they are very useful in animation. Once we have our object, we can use the select tool to select it by hand, or we can select the entire everything that's on the screen via double tapping the select tool. And once we do that, we just copy and paste the object. Then you can move it wherever you want. And again, once you deform it or move your reference dot, you can copy and paste it, and it will keep those same proportions as the one that you copied. Okay, next step is the undo and redo buttons. In Flipaclip, you have very handy shortcut, very similar to many other softwares. By tapping the screen with two fingers, you do the undo option. The redo option only works with the button on top. And again, once you run out of options, it will not let you undo and redo. A great thing about Flipaclip is that it actually lets you undo and redo in every single frame without changing anything in those other frames. So let's say here in this frame I have this object, and here I have this object. By undoing it, you can see that it changes position, while the things in the other frames do not change at all. This gives you a way easier time to fix mistakes moving between frames. Second tool is just the main screen. It just takes you to the first, basic proportions of the screen. Now, last thing is the project setting bar. So here is where you actually change your settings again. As you can see, you can change your frame rate and you can change your color, same way as before. Just save the changes. Here you have the frame viewer, where you can see all of the frames in your projects, and by holding them, you can delete multiples. This is undoable, so once you delete it, there's nothing you can do. But you can also copy and paste frames. You can do that again with multiple frames by copying and pasting. By selecting a frame, you can add a new frame which is empty after or before the frames. You can use the buttons on top to add frames to the beginning or the ending. And by selecting this tool, you select every frame. Now we're going to the actual animation features of the software. We have the onion skin. The onion skin is a feature which allows you to see what's going on between frames, so you can tell how to change your movement. Usually the frames after your frame is going to be green and the frame below it is going to be red. But you can also edit those onion skins. Right now you can see it's colored. You can change it so it's not colored. you can also see it's looping, which means that if I stand on the last frame, I can see the first frame right here as the next frame. If your animation is not looping, you can turn that off. Here is where you can see how many frames you have before and how many frames you have after. This is good for when you're going to have complicated arcs in your movements in the future and you want to make sure that all of the movement is following the arc. And you can also change the opacity of those frames right here. Again, these preferences are for your benefits, so you can just do whatever works best for you. This option right here allows you to skip frames. So let's say you want to see only one frame, but it's not the one directly behind this one. Then you just move them and you can see the first frame here even though you don't see the ones between them. Next tool is the grid. This one again allows you to divide, make straight lines, and here you can control the opacity and the spacing between them. Now, next option is the add image. Again, you can choose from the camera or your library. Here we have a nice feature, which is by choosing a photo here, you can actually have transparent objects from different software. So let's say I want to have something here from Procreate. Let's say I want to have this thing, but without the background. I can just save it as a picture without background, and when I actually import it, I will have it here without background. And when I actually see it with the onion skin, I'm going to be able to see it without the white background around it. Again, same thing with the video. Sadly, for the video, you don't have the transparent background option, and your animation or your video will automatically be translated to your current frame rate. So let's say right now my frame rate, let's make it in 4. So now when I'm going to add a video, it will automatically make it in that lower frame rate, even though the original video is not in that lower frame rate. Now, when you transfer a video, you want to use the file option instead of any camera roll option, because it will give you better quality when transferring. As you can see, when you do it with the video, the quality is not that great. Now, next thing we're going to cover is the layer option right here at the bottom right corner. This is how you open the layers. You have a limit of 10 layers for each video, but you can actually bypass that by just merging them down. So basically, once you have your layer, you can just hold it on top of the bottom layers or the top layers and merge them. This will allow you to free up more space to add more layers. This option basically lets you kind of cheat, but you have to make sure that your layers are very organized, otherwise you might create something that you don't want, and this action is unreversible, so you have to be very careful. This is also how you organize layers. Let's say right now I have both of these. As you can see, they're both turned on, but I can't see the one below. just switch them to see which one is above. To delete the layer, you just slide it to the left. This will open the lock option, which will not let you edit anything about the layer. You can duplicate a layer, and you can also delete the layer. For our video's purposes, I don't want to actually do all that much with those layers. Now that we have our layer, we can see the layer effects. So here is where you control the opacity, same way as the opacity on any other tool that we have in Procreate. You just move it up and down. You can also use this arrow at the side to change the opacity of the layer. Now, interesting things with Flipaclip is that we have the blending mode. So here I will just duplicate this layer so you can see it better. Here, as you can see, we have different opacities. We can move that up and down to see different results. But another thing we can do is change the blending modes. These are the same ones as you will usually see in Photoshop, which means you can test your options in Photoshop, in Procreate, and then replicate them here in Flipaclip. The only thing is that once you're choosing a certain layer, it will only be seen like that once you're on that layer. So let's say I'm in the layer below it. As you can see, it's here with the red marker. You can see which layer you're currently working on. Even though this layer is still in a different blending mode, you will not be able to see it if you're not standing on it. The last option is the glow option. As you can see right now, you have an ability to change the size, the hardness, and the color of the glow around your object, but it will not be highly affected by that blending mode. You can also change the color. Next option is the frame viewer. Here is where you're going to see the preview of your entire timeline. You can, of course, add a frame by clicking here, or by tapping on any frame, and it will open your toolbar for you. Here you can copy your frame and you can duplicate it either back or front. This will duplicate everything on all your layers, so it's not just one thing. Last tool is the music tool. Here you can actually see your music timeline. So let's say I have this file right here. You will see it here. You can add multiple tracks actually. You can also record and add from the audio library of Flipaclip. Last thing to know is that you can turn on and off any track by tapping on the side, and you can turn off audio entirely by tapping this icon. And to go back, you just tap the arrow on the top. This concludes Flipaclip video. This is again a tool review for Flipaclip. I realized there are some features I forgot to introduce. Here in the color palette options, you can actually save colors. First, you have your colors right here at the bottom, which are saved. You can actually replace them with new colors by holding the swatches with your current color. And you can also create new palettes which are empty by tapping here, and you can delete, rename, or clone those palettes by tapping them. There are some basic palettes which come with Flipaclip which you cannot delete or change. You can also have your color picker to use from different color all photos from before. And next feature that we're going to cover is the actual exportation in Flipaclip. So you have both the option to make movie from inside your project by choosing the make movie option. You can change the size. Usually it would not work so well to go to a size which is bigger than your current size, but you can go to different options. You can change your format. So as you've seen in the movie options on the main screen, you have the MP4 and the GIF options, which are moving formats. With the GIF option, you can choose to have your background transparent or not. The watermark is something that you can remove if you have the paid version. If you do not, it will always have the watermark. And the last option is the PNG sequence. Now this option is important for when we're going to composite your animation in Procreate later on. So let's say I want to save it as a PNG. It will let you save it. As for your GIF and MP4 option, you just export them regularly. It will automatically save to your photo library. Now, this is a Flipaclip main screen. This is the second option on how to export a video. You can export them by holding the video until it is selected. Here you have multiple options. You can delete the video. Will ask you. Here you can export it in however format that you want, same as before. You can duplicate a project with the icon in the middle. You can export it by other means. It will send it as a Flipaclip file though, which is not very compatible with basically anything. And the last option is the editing, which again you can only edit name, background and frame rate. So this is Procreate overview. As you can see here, this is the main screen and this is where you will be able to find all of your projects. I'll be beginning with going over the bar on the top right. If you tap on the plus symbol, this is where you add a new canvas. You have some saved templates which come originally with Procreate. But you can also create your own templates by tapping this icon on the top right below it. This will open the new canvas options. Right at the top here you have your canvas name. You can actually change that. This is where you change your canvas dimensions. You can do it with pixel, inches, centimeters, millimeters. As you can see, you have a size limit. I usually use pixels, the most convenient. And this is of course very regular procedures. You just tap your number. This will actually change the amount of layers that you can use. As you can see here with the maximum layers options, the number will change depending on the size, which is something that is important when it comes to animation. We will see that coming later on. The next option is the DPI, which is dot per inch. This is actually something that is more relevant to printing, but it is also important for the quality of your videos. So don't go below 300 DPI. I usually go between 500 and 700 just because it doesn't really affect the quality of the animation that much, but it's better for your quality. Next option is the color profile. Again, this is something that is more relevant to printing. This will affect the appearance of your colors. Usually it changes when you print it because it is different for screens and for ink. As you can see, you have plenty of templates to choose from. The most basic one is the P3, which comes with the software, which is basically just a screen. For the purpose of animation, it doesn't really matter. When we export from Flipaclip to Procreate, it has its own color profile, which you can change later on when you actually import the video. Next is time-lapse settings. This is actually not very relevant. It's just a feature of Procreate itself. which records a time-lapse of your project. This is more for people who draw and want to export their process later on. Again, you can change dimensions, you can change the quality. This just takes more memory out of your video once you export it. Last thing is the background color of your canvas. This is again not very important because you can change it later on. You can make it white, you can make it any other color. This is really not very important. You can make it transparent in the creation process itself, but again it can be changed, so there's no reason to change that right now. Once you create your canvas, this is your main canvas view. Again, same as Flipaclip, when you pinch it with 2 fingers, you can both enlarge it and rotate it. And once you rotate it and go out, your canvas will actually stay in its rotated position. So even though we created the canvas like this, once it's rotated, you can work on it. Okay, and now that we created the canvas, we can also import new projects via the photo feature or the import feature. The photo feature lets you import both photos and videos. The videos will be translated automatically to animation, but they will be limited by the amount of frames, which will depend on the size of the screen, same as we saw before. And the quality might be less good once it is imported, especially the animation. Again, same for the import. You can import a video from your files, or you can import photo as well. Again, same as the video from the photo. It will import it directly to animation, but unlike the photo import option, the quality will be slightly better. Next is the select, which lets you again select your project. Once you select your project, there are multiple options for you to choose from. First one is deleting a project, which is very self-explanatory. And next you have duplicate, which just creates a new version of the project. Next option is share, which is how you actually export a project from the main menu. You can export multiple projects at once, but if you want to export an animation, you can only select one, otherwise it will create an animation from those multiple selected options. As you can see, you have plenty of formats to choose from. Next option is preview, which just lets you see multiple projects at once. Once you tap on the screen, you can switch between them. Last option is the stack option, which just creates a stack. Another option is just hold a project and hold it on top of another one, and releasing it will automatically create a stack. Okay, now that we have our animations and templates, we can just choose one. And I will start going over the features of the actual software. So this is the main screen. I will begin from the top left bar. Again, to go to the main menu, you just go to library. This right beside it is the action. This is actually very important. This here in the ad lets you again insert a file, same as the import option from the main menu, except this one is only for a single layer in the project. Photo, again, same as the import feature of the main menu, and again only for a single layer in the project. Take a photo lets you use your camera, again to take a single photo for a single layer, and the text option, which allows you to add text. Once your text is selected, you actually have text options. Here you can change your font. You have plenty of fonts which come with the Procreate software, but you can also import fonts through this option right here on the right side of the screen. You can change the size inside your box and multiple other options inside it, as well as making it. This will create a text layer which is editable, but once you actually make it into a drawing layer, you will not be able to edit the text anymore. And next, after those options, we have the cut, the paste, and the copy options, which has either copy a single selected element or copy the entire canvas, which is the layer. Next, on the action tool, we have the canvas. This is where we can actually change our canvas settings again. You can change the size of it, you can change either one, or you can chain them here with this icon in the middle, and this will keep the proportions on either side. Again, you can change your dot per inch, and you can have the options of rotating and snapping the canvas to a certain position with no problem. Next, after the crop and resize, we have the animation, page, and drawing guide tools. The animation, again, is very self-explanatory and very important for our purposes as animators. This basically makes it that every new layer that you have is a new frame. You can create multiple frames easily by just adding frames in the layer feature, or by adding frames in the animation toolbar, or by duplicating a layer. Once you tap on a layer, you can hold it for a multiple amount of frames, and which is important once we are starting to play around with frame rates. You can make it a background, that is to say that the drawing that you will have here in the background will appear on every other layer while not obscuring the things that change between each frame. Next feature that we have is the settings. First, we have the ability to change how the animation will be played once we press the play button. The play button here. You can make it a loop, you can make it a ping pong, you can make it a one shot. I usually do it on loop because it's easier to see. You can change the frame rate, as we've discussed in previous lessons. The accepted frame rates are usually 24 and its multiplications. For these purposes, I'm going to use it on 12, which is basically animation on 2s, just for the convenience so we can see it better. Next feature that we have is the onion skin frames. You can actually decide the amount. In Procreate, we don't have a very advanced onion skin frames feature. You cannot change the number between the previous and the future frames, and whichever number you choose, it will display them on both sides. You can change the opacity of this onion skin. You can make it more or less prominent. And you can blend the primary frame, which is honestly very, not useful. And again, you can choose the colors, and before and after. I use the same ones as a Flipaclip and do the previous frame red and the next frame green. Next, after the animation feature, we have the page feature. It's basically the same, which makes every layer into a frame, although it's not very useful because you can't really do anything with it. It's just a way to display your sketches, I guess. Next thing we have is the drawing guide, which actually lets you use grids. The drawing guide in Procreate is editable. You can change the color here from the bar at the top. You can change the opacity, you can change the thickness, you can change the size, and we have multiple different types of grids. We have perspective, which allows you to use 1, 2, 3 dot perspectives and change them on multiple planes. As you can see, by editing the guide, you can change your perspectives pretty easily, and your colors as well. Next one we have is symmetry. Here we have multiple different options. This actually allows you to draw some patterns, and it will mirror them according to what option you chose. In each and every animation drawing guide, you can choose to use the animation assist, which will allow you to draw on those planes with no problems, just straight lines in accordance to the guide that you chose. Next option we have is the reference, which just allows you to use any type of image as reference. It's not very important for our purposes for animation. Next option is the flip tool. Very self-explanatory, it just flips the canvas. This counts as an action which is reversible. So if you make correction while your canvas is flipped, you cannot undo it if you want to keep that orientation of your canvas. Same for flipping vertical. Last thing we have is the canvas information, which is again a way to change our canvas properties. So we have the dimensions, which are changeable, same as the menu options. We have the layers. The amount of layers cannot be changed here, but it will give you your properties of your layers. Color profile, again, same as the main menu, you can change it even when your canvas is already in a different color profile. It will change everything on your canvas. Again, video settings, this is not changeable. It just shows you everything that you do. Last one is statistics, basically telling you what is going on with your project, how much time you worked on it, its size, etc. Next thing on our action tool is the share. Again, it's same as the main menu. You can just share your project from inside it. The video option, this is how you can see your time-lapse and export it. You can also turn it off. This will allow you to have less memory dedicated to your project. Next thing is your preferences. This is something that you can change. It will stick to any other project that you have. That's personal preferences for your Procreate experience. Next thing we have is the magic adjustment tool. Right here, this is again somewhat explanatory. You have different options to choose from. This is your brightness, saturation, and hue option. Let's, for the sake of showing it, just recolor it. We have our saturation, brightness, and hue. Next thing that we have is the color balance. This one actually changes in accordance to the value of your drawing. So let's say you have different grays, or the professional way to say it, different hues. The color balance option will let you change a single hue on your drawing. So you have your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows. Each one will be affected differently, and you can play around with your drawing and recolor it in accordance to what you want it to be. This is more important if you work with grayscale. Next thing we have is the curves. This one lets you change the different channels. You have your main channel, usually it changes brightness. You have your reds, your greens, and your blues. Again, you can use multiple dots to change the different colors. It's all very intuitive and you can play around with it. Next thing we have is the gradient map. Again, this works same way as our previous hue color balance, but it comes with a predetermined library. The way this works is basically you have your hues. Here you can actually add multiple swatches, and once you choose that swatches, you will determine which color each value is assigned to. So every white will now be color yellow, and so on. This will let you create a gradient, and everything in this hue range will be colored those certain colors. Next thing we have is the blur tool. So we have the Gaussian blur, which is just your basic blur, gives you a soft value. The way to adjust your blur is just open the blur option and slide your finger across the screen. You will see the bar at the top. You can also use a pencil option, which lets you blur a single, use the effect with the same tool as a brush. Next thing we have is the motion. Again, same as the Gaussian blur, except now when we change our pencil's direction, we can change the directions where the blur goes to. So it adjusts both the direction and the intensity of the blur. Again, we can do it the same with the pencil. This option is not very useful. Next one is perspective blur. Same with the other two, and in this one you can change the focus of your perspective. You can also make it directional, which means the blur is more intense in the direction where the arrow points. Again, you can change both the focus and the direction of your blur. And once again, we have the pencil option, which is again not very useful. Next option we have is the noise, very self-explanatory. You can change the shape, the size, what the actual blur is. This is good for creating patterns later on. Next one is the sharpen tool. This is again for sharpening photos. It's not very useful. The bloom tool is actually somewhat important. This allows you to create a glow. This will automatically select the brightest color on your screen. So as you can see, my black one is almost not affected, while the white is the most affected. You can change how much it's going to glow. You can change the size of the halo. And you can change what is affected, how much the dark colors are affected. Again, it will automatically select the brightest thing on your screen. Next thing we have is the glitch tools. Again, very self-explanatory. We have many options, and they can also be further adjusted with these tools. Next thing we have is the halftones. This is basically another way to make patterns. As you can see, you have different options to them. You can change the size of the pattern as well. Last option is the chromatic aberration option. You can both change the intensity of your tool and its focus point, or you can actually displace it. These tools are very interesting when making effects in compositing your animation. Next tool that we have here is the liquify. This actually lets you distort your images. There are multiple ways you can distort. You can intensify it and adjust it in accordance to what you need it to do. This is mostly to fix random mistakes in your animations or in single frames, and it will affect anything within a frame, so you have to be careful not to make too many adjustments in an area that you don't want it to be on. The clone tool is actually very annoying to use. It basically just lets you clone anything that is selected within an area while still moving the area around. Again, not very useful. Now that we covered the adjustment, we can go to the select tool. This one, again, very self-explanatory. We have the automatic select, which lets you choose based on colors. Again, this lets you automatically select a certain area. You can change the intensity and the amount of what you're selecting by sliding your screen to the side, same as any other effect. Once you select something, you can remove that selection, you can invert that selection. Now anything beside what was selected is selected. You can copy and paste that, which will move it to another layer. And you can use the feather tool, which lets you select with a soft edge. You can save it to your previous selections, which means it lets you select an area on multiple layers. Your selection will be saved, and you can color it. It will color it with your currently selected color. And of course, you can also clear. You have your automatic, you have your freehand, which lets you draw your own shapes. We have a rectangular and ellipses shape. Once you're in the select options, you can select multiple things at once. Once you're in the select options, you can select multiple things at once, and they will not be obscured. This basically concludes the select tool. Now what you can do with a selected area is you can actually move and transform it. So we're moving to the transform tool, and you have your uniform, which keeps the proportions in check. We have your freeforms, which lets you deform it. And we have your distort, which lets you distort the planes, and your wrap, which lets you, again, extremely distort the planes. You have your different interpolations. I usually use the bicubic. It lets you transform with the least amount of pixelation. You have your shortcuts, your rotations, your flips, and you have advanced transforming. Now, so once you select an area, you can actually adjust it as well. So let's say you have your selected area, you can adjust its hue. You can use any other adjustment as long as it is selected. And again, once you tap the screen, it will be unselected. So we have the brush tool, which is currently selected. You have plenty of brushes which come directly with the software. You have artistic brushes, you have sketching, you have special effects. You have basically anything that you can want, and you can add new brushes with the import option. You just download it and import it from your files. Once you have your brush, you can actually swipe to the left, duplicate it. You can share it via a link on the internet, or you can delete it. Inside your animation options and brushes, you can actually adjust a brush to your liking. As you can see, any brush which is not native to Procreate, which is either something that you import or duplicate, will have this small symbol on the top right of each brush. So let's say you duplicate it, you can see it right here. Your selected brush will be selected blue, and you can adjust it by tapping on your selected brush. Here you can change multiple things with your brush. Okay, so here is where you can actually adjust your brush. You can change the way it works to fit what you need from your tool. This is actually more important for background creation. You can see there are like many options which you can play around with your brush settings. I actually encourage you to play it with yourself. The same tools which work for your brush will actually work with any other brush that you have. This is your smudge tool. Again, very self-explanatory, just move things around. Your eraser tool. Again, very self-explanatory. And finally, your layer and color tools. So on the layer tool, we have your layers. You can add your background here. You can change the background. You can also change the way you choose your background. You have the different options. And you can also turn it off to create a transparent image. On the plus one, you can add layers. To delete a layer, you again slide it left. You can lock a layer, which does not allow you to edit it. You can duplicate it. And you can delete it. By sliding it left, you gain nothing, but if you are selecting a layer and sliding left on other layers, you can select multiple layers. Once you have multiple layers selected, you can actually group them. A group will let you organize your layers better and will also create a frame with multiple layers. As you can see, I can draw on multiple layers while it not becoming a different frame. If you tap on a layer which is selected, you can have the multiple options of that layer, such as renaming it, selecting it, filling it, clearing it, multiple options. We will go over some interesting ones. So, the clear, well, very easily understood. Let's go over other options. So, we have the alpha lock, which basically lets you draw on anything in that layer without going out of line. Another option to achieve that is actually going above that layer and creating a clipping mask, which basically allows you to draw only on what's inside the layer below it without it affecting the actual drawing. And once the clipping mask is released, though, you don't have that feature of not going out of line. Again, you can choose a drawing assist, which will correspond to your last turned on drawing guide. As you can see, our drawing guide is still like these lines that we had before. Inverting it will invert the colors, and you can merge it down or combine it down to create new groups and new layers. The next option is the actual layer mode. This lets you have multiple effects with color combination. Again, I encourage you to play around with it. This will come in handy later on when we're going to shade and composite our animation. To turn a layer on and off, you just click those little V signs, V boxes. And if you're turning off layer which has clipping mask, you will turn off any related layers. You can also add layers which will automatically be clipping masks if you go below an existing clipping mask, but not above an existing clipping mask. And this covers the layers. Next up we have the colors. Again, same as the one with the background, we have our multiple color options. You have different ways of selecting it. Here in the complementary colors options, we have a way to change both the hue and the selected colors. You can actually have multiple options with this one, which relates to different terminologies on color theory, which we'll cover in the background lesson later on. Your selected color will be in that box on the side. You can actually select multiple colors for certain brushes which has overlaying colors, and your selected color can be saved in a palette. In the palette feature, you can press long on a swatch to delete and change it. You can also bypass that by going to your palettes option and just deleting your palette. Okay, that'll be all in that section of Procreate.